Good afternoon, everyone. It's time to start this fourth last session of the Academy Camp number 5 of the Capacity Building for European Capitals of Culture project, which will delve on the issue of the potential of the digital. Of course, under the leadership of Jordi Pasqual, who has been leading these wonderful conversations since yesterday morning. This afternoon, it's Nicole McNiley's turn, who was the lead trainer for our Academy Camp with Chemnitz on this issue that I just mentioned, the potential of the digital for the European Capitals of Culture, but also for cultural projects, initiatives at large. So without further ado, Jordi, thank you so much. The floor is yours. And thank you, Nicole, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Mercedes. Muchísimas gracias. A pleasure to lead this conversation with Nicole, a researcher, evaluator, and facilitator, originally from Northern Ireland, currently based in the Netherlands, but today she is in Ireland. Nicole works across culture with specialisms in digital cultural heritage, music, and international cultural relations. She's worked for and with organizations including Arts Council England, PRS for Music Foundation, DG INPA, DG EAC, the British Council, Voices of Culture, the partnership that brings the voice of the civil society to the mechanisms of the European Commission, also UNESCO. She's currently impact advisor at Europeana Foundation, where she leads the development of the Impact Playbook, and she also is a collaborator in Culture Solutions, a social innovation group dedicated to promoting innovation in the International Union, international cultural relations. With this background, I cannot imagine a better curricula. We will discuss on the digital strategies for European Capital of Culture. We will probably go beyond this, because what Nicole is going to explain, it is based on her work with cultural institutions and organizations, events, and the topic is so new, so challenging, so full of doubts for the non-digital natives like myself. It's so important for us as human beings, for our communities, that we all have many questions. And yeah, we will try to go through all these questions. Nicole, the first question is related to the Academy Camp 2 that you held in Chemnitz. But it is very much related to the ECoC, to the many ECoCs that we have here with us today. What does digital strategy for an ECoC mean? What is a digital strategy about?
Thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure to see some faces and names and people that that we've worked with in the Academy Camp. Super happy to be here. So the main theme which came out of our Academy Camp, and actually which informed the development of the program which we had, was really that digital was not just one thing. And when we talk about a digital strategy, it sounds as if you have, like one document and you have different sections of each part of your work, but actually it should sort of be the other way around, when every plan you have for all of your work should incorporate digital. So it's sort of throwing the idea of digital on the other side of the other way. It's a different question, really. And I was thinking also, for example, within to take it to a non-ECoC example, within Europeana, we are constantly saying, we need digitization strategies. That's very specific to the digitization of cultural heritage and, for example, the funding that comes along with that. But it's not a digital, one digital strategy as one separate thing, covering only, certain different topics. So I think for an ECoC, I think there are I was thinking about what the approach could be for a strategy, and you also posed a question previously about the main things which could be in a digital strategy for ECoCs. And I think there are 4 things which I was thinking about. So there are people and place, and these are the real things which drive ECoCs, the communities around you and the place in which you are based, and the connections also to other places around you and internationally. And then you have the process, and actually the process, I think, is actually where the digital strategy comes in a bit more strongly. And then you have the product, and basically there are sort of 4 key areas, I say, which you would consider in a digital strategy: the people, place, the process, and the product. And in each of these, you see many different things. I was trying to think about actually how you prioritize these, but I think it's very dependent on your situation and your level of, how you might rate your digital maturity with different things. And that might then help you identify your prioritization, which things are most important to work on. And there are also 3 different sort of transversal themes to run through these, which are mindset, values, and the vision. And I was really inspired working with Sam Lindley on the Academy Camp, and her focus on having a theory of change, this really impact-driven approach to programming. And as an impact advisor and working a lot on impact assessments and evaluation, I really loved how embedded this thinking was in something so creative as well. It was very data-led, very driven. And this vision, I think, is super important, but also the values, this focus on authenticity, focus on inclusion and being inclusive, also being critical and asking tough questions, and being led by the grassroots, by the bottom up. And then this mindset, and I think this mindset is also something which comes in quite in Europeana. When we work with, I led an exercise to define what digital transformation means for heritage organizations. And we define this in 2 ways. It's not just about the tools you're using, the services you're creating, but it's also the mindset you take towards digital. And I think, what I have here, proactive, welcoming, open, reflective, might change in different contexts. You might have different things in there. But having a mindset that's open towards digital is pretty important. Having a proactive mindset, I think, is very important. And also reflective, because I think also within this digital strategy is room for failure. And I have this in terms of the process. You have here failure and conflict, and probably conflict management should also be in here. But also the idea of review points, evaluation, iterative improvement. So I think I may have opened up the question completely widely in terms of what a digital strategy could look like. But I think it's for each person, I think it will be very different. For each context, it will be different. And I think it's really about the mindsets, actually, about how you approach everything you're doing, and reframing digital, not just as the end goal. It's the method that helps you deliver the vision you already have. The mission you already have. It's not really changing that much, actually. And I think when you have that perspective, it really does help you be a bit less fearful sometimes of digital. So maybe any questions on this? Is not the most developed anything that I've made, but it sort of helped us to outline what I was trying to say, this thinking about in preparation for today.
What building a digital community means. What does it mean? It is, I think that it probably means many things, but in my mind, at least 2. A European capital of culture needs to take care of those that are very familiar with the digital world. Mm-hmm. Either they are working in cultural organizations, freelancers, small and medium enterprises. You may have a digital community over there, and perhaps this is not connected. Well, probably an ECoC should be aware of this, growing and maturing group of people that work in a place. Second answer could go in the direction of the audience, the audiences, and the way the ECoC and its programs can build new audiences, can use all the media, all the channels to connect people to the program. Feel free to go in one direction or the other, because we will have time to go in the other direction. But can you answer that question? Those questions, in fact.
So I think in terms of building digital communities, I would take it even back a step and maybe go in a third direction, if you don't mind.
Sure.
But to start at least, and then I'll come back. Basically, to ask the question of, do you need to build that digital community? One of the main themes we heard from our Academy camp, and also working with Europeana, we're working with a network of 3,500 people. I also work as a trustee of a network charity in Northern Ireland. We learn a lot about networks that where with all good intentions, we want to bring people together and solve the big problems. But the question should be, do those communities those people might be disparate, and maybe they don't necessarily need to come together. In some cases they do, and there can be a lot of value added, but the first step should be actually assessing their needs and assessing how you can help deliver those needs, I think. And I think that's always the really critical thing, is to ask the question, like, what do you need and how can we actually help address this? Is a community one of the ways? And in terms of building a digital community, I think it's very interesting because, again, coming back to the main theme of digital being part of everything you're already doing, and embedded in your approach, maybe the digital community is actually quite local and they're actually quite connected, but a digital element to that connectivity might be the method of communication. So maybe it could be a WhatsApp group, or maybe they have a Basecamp or a Trello board to keep track of their local, the local actions. And in terms of those two audiences, those familiar with the digital world, and those more general sort of audiences, I think the case still remains. You should be asking them exactly what their needs are. At least this is where I would start from, and then you can start delivering in that sense. And I think some of the key messages which also emerged from my own experience, but also from our Academy camp and some of the amazing speakers on the Academy camp, were that actually communities have a lifespan. Not everything will exist forever. I think it was Ella Kagel who said that, communities have naturally a 1.5 year long lifespan. And, you should prepare for this, that not all communities last forever, not all efforts will be long term. And also that when you are thinking of communities, and if you do have this long term vision, then you also have to invest in this long term management and structure for that. I think Callum Bowden was most forceful in stressing that actually communities do need a governance model of some description, whether that's co-governance, ideally co-governance, also emphasized by Ella Kagel, through a number of different tools you can use for co-governance and co-budgeting and co-planning, like cooperative, sort of led by the cooperative. Nonetheless, a structure is needed, and you have to invest in that structure, whether it's for your general audiences or for those familiar with the digital world. So I don't know if that answers the question completely, but I think it's actually understanding the needs that you're trying to address, and then when you understand the needs, actually thinking then about that impact, that vision of actually what the community, what working with this community is for, and what you want to achieve in the end.
Who are the members of a digital community in a city? Who they are? Who are they? Because
I think
you say, and I like the approach, go and ask them what they need. What if I do not know who they are? How can I identify the members, even if they do not call themselves members, or they are not aware that they will be labeled as members of a digital community. But how can I identify them? Who are they?
I maybe will give you an example from where I am right now. I'm in Northwest Ireland. I'm in a county called Donegal, the most beautiful place in the world, I can say. And I know that I am biased, of course, but you can say here that, so this is a very rural community, but actually digital is a super important means of communication here. So for example, my mum is constantly sharing with me updates from the Facebook group, for example. And where I'm from in Northern Ireland, our local area are connected by a WhatsApp group. And so in a way, these are digital communities, because especially where I am from in Northern Ireland, there is no other sort of sense of community, especially we're a divided community. So we don't have necessarily one place where both religions would come together, for example. But actually, the WhatsApp group is a place where everyone is connected. And this is really interesting as a model. And this is, if you said to people, oh, you're part of a digital community, 100% they would say no. They would be like, what are you talking about? It's a useful thing for them. They understand what is happening. They maybe find a gardener, and maybe they, there's a suspicious van somewhere. But this actual idea of community is quite beautiful, but they wouldn't identify as being in a digital community. But the reason I know about this is because of asking my dad and my mum, sharing information. And likewise in the Republic of Ireland, where I am now, this is, my mum sharing things and hearing, seeing things on Facebook and other people posting and blah, 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 events. And a way of connecting with that community would be by using the method which they already use. So joining, and there's the authenticity, which has to, there's I don't live in Donegal, but my family are from here. There's an authenticity question of, if I came in here and started asking people what they need, what they desire, you would wonder to what extent people would be a bit reluctant to respond and say, who is this person? She is not from here. But I think, again, if you come with this with a real genuine, approach, and you ask people in a way that doesn't alienate them, and using a tool which they already use, I think it's a really good way in. And I know we talked with Chemnitz a lot about different community groups. They have really active local like voluntary associations, and I'm not sure if that's the right word for them, but they sort of local associations, quite active. And whether or not they're digital communities, the likelihood is that digital is already embedded in their communication. And so that would be a way of getting them in there. Again, is that answering any questions, or am I just telling you too many stories about Ireland at the moment?
No, it does. It's well, it's a little bit worrying that you mentioned both products of Meta. Is this the name of the now the company that owns WhatsApp and Facebook? But don't worry, because I'm not asking any question on that. I'm sure that this question will come with Paula Boet.
Yes.
We invited her as representative of the Global Cities Coalition for Digital Rights, and I'm sure that she will address this question soon.
Please. One thing on this, we actually did address this also with Ella Kagel, and I think also potentially with Callum Bowden, that the idea is that, there are generally open source alternatives to all of the platforms we're using. For example, some of the co-budgeting and co-governance models, which Ella shared, are open source and not owned by the big 5 or 3, I don't know how many we have now, not by the big companies. But she did emphasize that this takes a lot more time. You have to learn a new skill. This is a new literacy you have to develop to use these tools. And so, of course, the natural response is to go with the tools we already know. And unfortunately, those tools are exactly as you say, what they are at this present moment of time. But it's something which they also, I think it's Ella and Callum, both stress that the tools you use to build a community and to connect a community are very much integral to actually what that community will look like. So if you use something it takes a bit more time to learn, maybe it requires some coding or something like this, then there may be some exclusion of some people who are less confident with this. And in a similar way, if you use something everyone is using, then maybe everyone is there. But it also means that the tools you use actually set the values of your community as well. So if you go completely open source, maybe that's setting it's a real value statement as well, which is necessary for your community. So there's opportunities and things you need to think about the digital tools you might embrace in delivering a community effort or something like this.
Yes, no, what you say is very interesting, because that was excellent, Nicole.
Phew.
Thank you. At this point, Mercedes or Cristina, do you want to raise any question?
I'm very curious as to what Nicole might think of my, let's say, existential query right now. You have generated an existential question in me, Nicole. You have, well, you have said that, if I got it right, digital tools, put it bluntly, at the service of a vision, right? But at the same time, a need for substantial change within the organizations that want to apply the digital strategy. So how do these two things go along? How do you put them together? You have a vision, but you need change.
No, it's a fantastic question, and it's something I'll refer back to my work in Europeana for this as well, and also with the crafts project, which is actually a project called Mingay. I can share the link later. Yes, there is a need both for this vision, where you want to go, and then also the actual mechanisms to get you there. And in Europeana, we defined digital transformation, and we made, again, focusing on mindsets as well as those tools you're using. So this sort of joint approach. But if we understood digital transformation as being enabled by developing capacity, and whether whether these, and when we're talking about changes, we're talking about sometimes very large changes are needed, but in any case, any large changes is usually a series of small changes building up. And so I think, and I also take this approach when it comes to, I think everyone takes this approach to learning. You do things in small pieces. And if you see it as a series of small changes, it's much less hard to embrace. And this is why when we define digital transformation, we made a very specific sentence saying, actually, any change is valuable. You could be the Rijksmuseum, or you could be a volunteer-led museum. Whatever you do, this has amazing value. This is part of your digital journey. And so in terms of those capacity building, I think it's also, and if I may reflect openly, sometimes capacity building and like learning is something as simple as reading an article and or listening to going to Coursera, doing something like this. And I think people don't see the value in this sort of constant informal learning, also of sharing practices like we're doing today. So there are many ways to increase your capacity, and of course get experts in when you need to as well, because you learn by working with experts as well. You learn by working with those people who are the digitization experts, who are the people who understand how to measure the force of air going through a piece of glass when it's being blown. There's no way we're ever going to have that expertise. So I think, seeing it as a number of different solutions to take you on that journey is a way forward. I'm not going to say it's the only way, but hopefully that's resolving the crisis. But the vision is also needed as well to get you to where you want to be, I think. And I see, sorry, Jordi.
Yes. Cristina has a question, and perhaps Sylvain has also a question. Feel free, Sylvain, to take the floor. Cristina.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicole, for this first part of the afternoon. It was very interesting. And I have it's a question or a comment, more or less, and it's somehow related to what Mercedes just asked. Because in my experience, I'm also very often caught into these existential crises when talking about digital, because, well, I work very much on this concept of audience development, and digital is considered one of the strategic approaches to deliver audience development plans, audience development vision. And what is very often missing is this connection between the mission and the vision of an organization, of an institution, and the use of digital, which obviously is a tool, is a group of tools, let's say, that need necessarily to be related to a vision and a mission. Otherwise, there is, let's say, a lack of sense in using them without a strong anchor to vision and mission. But how difficult it is in your experience, because in my experience, it is very difficult to let institutions and organizations make this connection. There is still very much this idea that digital is the solution to all our problems, and that it is, you know, sufficient to have a digital tool, to make something digital, to make a digital project, and we will solve every problem in terms of audience development, engagement of the communities, and so on and so forth. So do you also experience that difficulty in making it clear that digital needs to be related to the mission and the vision?
So it's a really super comment question. Thank you so much. I think it's so you've made me think about something that I cannot think. I'm so sorry. I can't think exactly of the expression that I encountered during the complete lockdowns, some months or years. It's hard to know time anymore when this was. But there was something about the closer we get to having digital more embedded in all of our practices, it's almost like we go on a roundabout and we come back to understanding that the real value is about people and our connections and those things which we cannot replace through digital. And so I think in a way, maybe that's a natural, it's a shame. It's not, I don't think it's a shame. There's a learning journey and there's a conceptual journey behind everything. Everything you work on, there might be a lot of talking and blah, 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 blah. Eventually you come to the right place. And I think in some cases, everyone has to go through that journey. And maybe Mercedes, this is part of also from your question, everyone has to go through this journey of thinking, oh, digital is the solution, and then realizing it's not. And that, yeah, you might have a great CRM or customer relationship management system, but actually you have no customers. And you come back to the question of actually, okay, we still need to build the relationships. And I think maybe that it's by no means, maybe there are ways of pushing people further in that learning process where they have to find this out themselves. But I think I wish I could remember, if I can find it in the break, I will. This expression of we're coming back to actually understanding the power of communicate, like effective, authentic, genuine communication as humans, as being inclusive, as bringing people in, and digital is only a tool to help us deliver those relationships. And I hope that, I don't think it's by no means an answer, but I don't know, does it help at all? Maybe you'll have some more time being very frustrated and eventually, okay.
No. I mean, it helps because, I mean, this is exactly what I sometimes think when I come through those problems and those difficulties. So thanks a lot. It's been of great comfort. Let's.
Good.
Yeah. Oh.
Sylvain, vous voulez faire une question?
Yes, thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Jordi, and thank you very much, Nicole. I was very pleased also that you started your presentation with the word people, because we tend to say that digital is all about technologies, but it's also very much about people. So thank you for making the connection. You spoke a lot about the digitization of artifacts in museums, for example, but we could also speak about the web streaming of performances. That's always using digital as a tool, but somehow we could also use, we can and we do use digital for producing new artifacts, new cultural expressions. So it's not digital as a tool, it's more digital as a mean to produce something new. And I would like you to elaborate a little bit more about digital art.
Absolutely. I also on this, sorry, just 1 second, I will very quickly share my screen again. Also under place and process, I had in here contemporary heritage, which absolutely we're making heritage constantly, and especially in a digital context. And what else was I going to highlight? Somewhere, sorry to look past my computer to the screen. Something else. But absolutely, in terms of, I remember speaking to, I spoke recently with Maaike Verbeek, who is the director of DEN in the Netherlands. So they support the digitization of the Dutch cultural sector. And her biggest challenge was that, now COVID is finishing, fingers crossed, let's all hope. Now that, we can go to concerts again. Now we can, have some sort of normal life again. People are forgetting about the opportunities of digital and the positives that it did bring during those horrendous times, but they are forgetting the opportunities and the skills that, they have developed these skills. Then why can't they have, this sort of hybrid program where they have something live and also in terms of streaming? And I think I to some extent I see that this is the case, and I also regret this. I also wish that, for example, I'm again from Northern Ireland, and we have a really fantastic theatre tradition, and I was able to watch theatre in Northern Ireland living in the Netherlands, and this was fantastic. And I can't do that anymore, and I have to come and visit, which is also good. But they've lost that. They've lost that, and I paid for those productions. I paid for that access. So in a way, there's definitely things which are being lost, which we should sort of build into this idea of this hybrid programming. But again, it is also responding. It should also respond to audiences. Maybe for some people, this didn't really work for their audiences. For others, it did. That's again, follow the data, follow what you've learned. I think there's something really important, and maybe also coming back to the idea of that we talked about earlier, these different alternative platforms and new ways of thinking. And I think also Paula will have something to add to this, I hope, that actually maybe this is also an opportunity to reconsider, not necessarily, and I will not advocate, I will not, like for example, intellectual property is an amazing part of creating the revenues, much needed revenues for creators. But there are alternative ways of sharing digitized content as well, which might open up new business models in a digital context as well. So there are opportunities by this digitization of sort of contemporary culture, contemporary performing arts, and everything around this that could be explored. And I wonder, is there anything else that I can respond to that I haven't responded to, Sylvain? Or is that okay? Yeah, super. Thank you for the question.
Well, yes, good. No, we are progressing. Some of the questions that have already been posed were related to questions we had previously agreed, Nicole, that I would suggest. But that's fine. Let me ask you on examples of outstanding projects you have been involved, not necessarily in European capitals of culture, but that you believe they are truly inspirational, remarkable examples of today's relation between the vision and the mission of a cultural institution or a cultural event and the digital world. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I have a really wonderful example. I think it's wonderful. I'm working with a museum at the minute, the Huis des Seidenkultur. Sorry, my German is terrible with the Dutch accent now. The House of Silk Culture in Krefeld in Germany, quite close to the Dutch border, actually. I absolutely have loved working with this organization because everyone there who works there is over 75. and they are involved in a digitization project. And this is through a European funded project called Mingay. And they are absolutely, I've really only become part of this project in the past year, and I have absolutely loved working with everyone there. In particular, the what we call them HDS, because my German is terrible, in HDS, they have really embraced everything. It has really overwhelmed everything they expected. They had really, they were happy to be involved in a European project. Of course, this was the first time they had been involved, so really the expectations of what was needed was quite overwhelming. And only one person, only one volunteer is actually confident in speaking English. So there's a language barrier. There are many other, many of them don't use Zoom. They, whenever COVID came, they had no way of, some of them don't have emails. So they had so many things to overcome. And Mercedes also, we talked about these small changes. To see these small changes that have this small museum, volunteer-led, all over 75, that they have taken, and the connections, and it's not just about the changes they've made, but the connections they've made to their wider city, that they have now, they have been part of the development of a local app for their city. So they have, added content and, put points on the map that should be part of the city tour. And they, they're engaging on a European level. They're thinking about the preservation of this heritage that many of them have worked in as practitioners. And they know that, they're getting older and this heritage needs to be preserved. And so it's absolutely inspiring as an example of these really small but super significant changes that have so much value. And I think if you would situate that, for example, within a European Capital of Culture context, then I think in any way of supporting those even further connections, building their capacity, even maybe through new volunteers, and getting a younger generation of people into to keep the legacy of this craft going, this museum operating, and supporting these volunteers in their the work they have to do around the digital products would be super. And I think it's I really recommend. It's just for me, this is a really inspiring example to work with. Everyone is so passionate and so open to digital, even though they're so some people don't have email addresses. And so this is really it was the first time I'd worked on a museum, if I can say that, small, that's so volunteer led, that doesn't have a professional it's not professionally led. If I don't want to say it's not professional, because it very much is. They're doing an amazing job, but if you understand what I mean, it's not a salaried, they have no salaried staff. And this was really fascinating and inspiring.
Thank you very much. Very good example. It's I'm relieved that an example of people that are not digital native deserves you highlight that example, not other examples that I'm sure you have from people that are younger
and very people who have a lot of experience in this. But I wanted to emphasize that it's the value of the change is relative to you and your context. So you can't expect every museum to become the Rijksmuseum or SMK in Denmark. You can't expect everyone to transform into this. It's all about the diversity as well, about supporting the diversity of what is there. So maybe I will. There's one final thing which I find quite interesting, maybe on the topic of digital, and to come back to something that someone I cannot remember mentioned earlier, which was because I know we're almost about to finish, was that ECoCs have this real opportunity in that actually, we don't know what will happen in 5 to 10 years time, and this could be around data collection. And Paolo will probably remember that when we discussed data collection in our academy camp, we had this idea, we don't know what data collection will look like in 5 years time, 10 years time. We don't know what we'll be doing with it. We won't know our own skills or the platforms we might use to analyze and present this data. or how data collection will be embedded in what we do. At the same time, we also don't know what cultural performance will look like in 5-10 years time, what digital will look like when it's more embedded in cultural performance, production, developments, and research and development. So there are super opportunities in ECoCs, whereas normal project funding is so short that you don't actually have this long life cycle. And I think ECoCs have this real, they can be this real hotbed for R&D, research and development, going forward. And I think maybe I'll end with that. But that was something that really struck me from our Academy camp, this real opportunity.
Good, thank you. I hope that we have not blocked the server of the Mingay project with almost all of us clicking at the link you provided.
I can explain why if it's happened.
If they ask, identify yourself as the responsible for that. Unusual peak in the consultation of the website. Nicole, isn't it all this too expensive or very expensive? I mean, augmented reality, this is expensive.
Yes, we did cover this also in our Academy camp, and this is something we've done many surveys. For example, again, I speak in the museum context about barriers to digital transformation, and much of it comes down to cost, and whether that's cost of the technology or cost of the time it takes to hire someone or to invest in training or to actually work on this. We heard from Stepana, and I'm so sorry, I've forgotten his second name, from Brain Studio in the Czech Republic. He was saying that actually, again, looking at this timescale, we will start to see devices becoming cheaper. Like we're already seeing with quite high functioning phones becoming much, much cheaper. And we will start to see progress in this regard. And it may be, you know, I remember that when the Google glasses got a bit popular and then they completely disappeared because safety concerns, I think, and probably also data privacy. We do anticipate that devices and things which are actually accessible to people will become much cheaper. But then you also have different models, for example. So I'm going to talk about, so Stepana had mentioned I will send a link, I've completely forgotten what it's called, a link to something which, it was like an immersive theater performance. They sent you, it was like a theater takeaway. They sent you the headset to wear, and you experienced it in your home, and it was delivered to your house. So it's like a theater takeaway. And then of course you give the headset back. But this is actually quite an affordable way of taking something to people. These devices can be used again. Of course, there is an initial investment, but if that investment becomes lower in the future, which it is anticipated, then it will cost money, but everything costs money. And I think it's about priorities. And if you see a way of digital, again, thinking back to that impact and the vision and the people you're trying to serve, if you see that digital, a tool can help you deliver a stronger impact for that audience, then, you know, there's a prioritization which you'll have to do. But this is a natural part of making a budget.
Good. We could listen right now to Anna from Chemnitz, Paolo and Becky from Matera, two cities, European capitals of culture, both, and to a network of cities, an emerging network of cities, Paula Buet representing Barcelona City Council as leader of this cities coalition for digital rights. First is Anna. As I said, we have heard great things of your digital strategy. Congratulations, you have been not that recently appointed, but still congratulations for this recognition. And let us know what you're planning. Anna, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jordi. Thank you for the invitation, also for us, for organizing also this last Academy camp. Happy to be here. Yeah, as you already said, my name is Anne Kurze. I hope you hear me okay. I work for Chemnitz 2025. I've been involved since writing the second bid book in everything related to the long-term strategy, the narrative, transformation process, evaluation, and so on. So today I'm here to give you an overview on our ideas for digitalization, the role that it plays in our program and our process, and a little bit where we stand. I tried to make it short, but let's see if I can keep the time. You can just interrupt me or just ask me questions maybe at the end, the best. So yeah, let me briefly go back to digitalization, why it's so important in our bid book. Yeah, as you know, as we've stated already, digitalization has been an important topic for quite some time, even before the pandemic. We also know that many cities and organizations of any kind struggle with it somehow. It's always a topic that is sometimes difficult. It has a lot of opportunities, but also, yeah, a lot of obstacles come with it and so on. So we said, okay, this is really a big chance. ECoC title hosting for 1 year. This is really a big international event and a great opportunity to really make a shift in this sense throughout the city. Yeah. So, and additionally, of course, we were writing the second bid book in 2020, which is just when the pandemic hit, and we felt the impact on our own bodies. Yeah, and moving to the digital workspace and seeing how the cultural sector was handling the situation. And of course, watching also a bit painfully the other ECoCs, that especially of 2020, that were having such a hard time to deliver their programs that they had prepared for 2020. So it was just a confirmation and a reinforcement, let's say, to really put digitalization in the bid book and put it in chapter 1 in the beginning, that it's really important. We said, okay, how can we do that? Like let's use the ECoC like as an opportunity to rethink, right? To find new ways how we work digitally in culture, especially. Let's make thanks for the background music. Yeah, let's make a digital splash in terms of capacities of people, skills. Let's find ways how we can create international impact in the digital sphere and seizing the opportunities that digital offers there. But we also realized that would take a big learning process in the city and all different sorts of actors. I mean, we're not all digital natives, and yeah, so we just knew that be it in the city administration, be it in our project partners from the program, we would need to build capacity and we would want to use that chance. And at the same time, we thought, okay, it cannot be just like ticking a box, right? That's not emotional, that's not interesting. So what would be the motivation for everyone to really get to grips with that? Huh? And we therefore looked for a conceptual link with our narrative of our bid book. As you may know, the motto of our bid and our project is "See the Unseen: European Makers of Culture and Democracy." It's basically, like in a really short sentence, about celebrating creativity in everyone and bringing people together around this joy of making things, of being creative. So at the heart of our cultural program, we have like an overarching concept that frames this entire cultural program, which is the European Workshop for Culture and Democracy. And let's say it's sort of it's like the mechanism of our transformation process, if you want to. It's like our approach, and it basically means that the whole process of making our program and delivering it in the end in 2025 should be like the idea is like it's like a workshop. Okay, so it's similar to the creative hubs and the co-working spaces and so on. It's a place where we want to discover our own abilities. We want to work with others. We want to learn together from each other. We see it as a process where we can exchange with others that are even coming from quite different places than ourselves in many different senses. And it's also a place where old stuff can get reused, right? Like the invisible, unseen things become useful again somehow. Let's say it could be local history or personal stories in the light of a European context or European history, but also maybe discovering, in the case of Chemnitz, it's very interesting to rethink or discover what discourses or social structures and relations are existing and are invisible, especially in the digital world. That were hidden until something like August 2018 happened, where suddenly they turned to the analog world, let's say, and we saw thousands of people on the street that were invisible before. So that's that's the idea of the European Workshop for Culture and Democracy, more or less, in a nutshell. And it just means that we realize that we need to think in a hybrid way from the beginning. So we say, okay, so we need like sort of a tool or something that to make it happen. And then we came up with this idea of the European Digital Makerspace, which is basically like the idea of the workshop, but it's a focus on the digital space. And right now, we're developing it. The concept is slowly being developed, and let's say we could say it has like 3 aspects: the implementation of this idea. One is the capacity building and then the training of skills. Another one is building, let's say, the digital community around makers. I will explain that later. And the last one would be like creating a platform. Like this digital makerspace, is it a physical thing? Is it just a virtual thing? Is it one thing? Is it a connection of different tools? So this sort of platform, network, whatever it will be, should be developed as well. So regarding the first point, the capacity building, it's about developing digital skills and developing also, let's say, hybrid thinking. When we were talking before, I thought that this question how we move between the analog and the digital world or realities, it's not often so clear really, and how they link together, where the opportunities are to the point where they come together. That is something that is sometimes a bit hard to think. So this is let's say the aim of the capacity building, which, as I said before, should be at very different levels and with involving many different stakeholders. Like apart from, so shortly after winning the title, let's say in the beginning of 2021, we were offered the opportunity of hosting the Academy Camp. It was quite early for us, but we said, okay, let's see. And we had at that stage already made like a short, really brief needs analysis amongst in the team and some other colleagues in the city administration and also project partners that we knew. That okay, so what if we started now with the capacity building, like what would your focus be? What is the biggest need? And surprise, actually digitalization came out as like the most important thing. So we had the Academy Camp, which was really great. As I said that before in another presentation, but it's really it brought together a lot of ideas and conversation starters, let's say. It covered a really broad bandwidth of topics, hybrid, digital, of marketing, communication, of building communities, and so on. So it really helped us to move forward. And in the meantime now, like that was last year, like taking place, and in the meantime we have been building up our organizational structures and so on. So now we have actually now a team of project developers that are starting to work with our working on the development process of our projects that are in the Bitbook, to bring them into shape and a state where they can be presented and try out their things and so on. And this is taking place now. So we are looking at right now where the projects are, and we think that from like beginning summer, more or less, we can start with like really offering trainings that are tailor-made to the needs of our project partners, which no doubt will will have a digital dimension, of course. We actually touched there in the Academy Camp some topics that I think are particularly interesting for the project partners, topics like digital marketing and communication, but also the hybrid programming, developing the digital aspects of the projects, which we think is still sort of a weakness, right, of our program. And then, of course, these links, like how do you use digital tools for audience development and even project management. Then the second part, building the community. Our project is about connecting makers, as I said before. So it's about building relations that are based on the joy of being creative across all other differences. Between people that are so different that usually they would not, they're not likely to connect with each other. That's the magic that we would like to happen, right? So the big question is like, how do we start building such a community? And we have some ideas, we have some pilot projects that we're trying out. We had the really brilliant conversations and input from the experts, Ella Kagel and Colin Bowden, as you said, Nicole, before. It was really very interesting how to focus on the individual needs of those communities. And we think we think of building maker community, but at the same time we think we need to connect those makers that already know each other in the local area digitally. I mean, of course they connect, with they go to a garage and have a beer together, maybe, or they are in a co-working space, or they have a WhatsApp group together. But then, how do we connect them more? That's a process that we're still figuring out, and we think that it needs to come like bottom up. It's not something that you can plan top down and say, okay, now we're gonna. But that was one of the big learning points from the Academy Camp, actually, that you need to see where the needs are and see how it can grow. So now, of course, we are in our daily work, we are building a lot of relationships. We are connecting people. We are connecting ourselves with a lot of people. We need a CRM management system that we want to have long term, want to remain as a legacy and stuff like that. And we need the audience development strategies to develop from each project and also on a program level. So there we are quite at the beginning, I would say, right? And the third part is the platform. There we have had a roadmap. So we had like a process where we consulted different experts, international best practice, people from the local context, just to see what they think, how that could look like. What would a Makerspace.eu look like? Is it a website? Is it whatever? So we know that we want the ECoC website not to be Chemnitz 2025 anymore, because in 2026 it will not be so interesting to go to that website, right? That's why it's a Makerspace EU. We know that it should be a big tool to reach our audiences, connect the makers for communication, for events and ticketing, of course, all the usual things, let's say. But we are still testing and trying out what could be the ideal format, right? For example, we have this summer a festival, which is Makers United in summer. And this festival has started just as a pilot, a website where different makers can present themselves. So it's a first step. It's not interactive yet, really, unfortunately, but still, we have some stakeholders trying out what it could look like and learning from this experience.
And
you also, yeah,
you mentioned that you're working with makers. I think I'm familiar with this concept, but I would be happy if you can explain a little bit more.
Yes,
who they are.
It's a good question. So we say okay, so there's the usual makers, you know, that you think they're in a fab lab and so on. But we said no, we think a maker can, like, everyone is a maker. Whoever has an ability to do something is a maker. So it doesn't matter if you're really good at cooking or at knitting or at working in a metal workshop. So if you do something, or if you're, you know, hidden away in your garage transforming an old car, for example, they are all makers. And that is what it's really broad. But the idea is that this really broad identification of opportunity, let's say, connects people, right? So that many people can connect can identify as a maker. So yeah, just to finish that, the Maker Festival, for example, it starts with from a format which was the Maker Fair, like sorry, forgot the word. Yeah, like just a normal fair, you know, where with stands where people present what they're doing. But we start incorporating other sorts of makers so that people can start to connect with that idea. Other stakeholders, just regarding the platform. So we have more ideas coming up now from the city, more projects, of course, but also regarding the platform. So someone was saying, okay, I want to create a platform for, let's say, matchmaking, yeah, for people that want to finance culture, or some projects, and others that need the money. So we say, okay, nice idea, and now let's see how we can bring everything together into one thing that works. Yeah, and we have more ideas. Yeah, like a hackathon we would like to do with young digital makers to see what their ideas are. And generally speaking, the ideas is always to bring together as many different perspectives as possible to develop our project and our approaches. And the last point that I want to say is that, yeah, we would like the platform or hub or whatever it will be, we would like it to be connected to an open data platform. There was a very good best practice example that we had from Matera, where they told us how they used the open data, and we have the idea of collecting data and making it at the same time available for project makers to use, yeah, where specific people meet, or what they like, or whatever data we can collect, yeah. So that's something that we are about to develop as well. And I think maybe my time is up. Yeah, thank you. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. That was very complete. Let me share with you that we have a person whose name is Sarah in the waiting room. If you know who she is, please let us know with a bilateral message in the chat to myself or to Sarah Vieux. As we had this incident this morning, we are not letting in people that we do not know or has previously registered. So if you're waiting for somebody you know whose name is Sarah, let us know, please. Now we go to Matera. Paolo and Becky. Paolo first. You
Hello,
representing Matera. You have been recognized by some of the previous speakers in previous sessions as, for various reasons, as an example. European Capital of Culture, one of those that stay in the golden history of ECoC. With this responsibility, I give you the floor.
And thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for having us in this very interesting event. Actually, we are going to present you and share with you something that is an action for the future or currently ongoing, and Becky more precisely will go into something that has happened but that we would like to continue in the future. And I'm very happy that it seems that it was prepared, but it was not. That after Anne was closing with this reference to the open data, and I'm actually starting to introduce you the project we are working on that is called Culture Data. Just a little point here that, of course, today myself and also Becky, we are representing an organization that is based in Matera, and it's called Matera Hub, which has been working with the process of the European Capital of Culture. And then Becky, of course, you know her, she has been actively part of the team that has run the European Capital of Culture. We had a very particular interest in understanding how to valorize the European Capital of Culture format as an opportunity for experimentation in very different fields, particularly in the area that refers to the creative and cultural sector. The project that I'm presenting you and that we are working now is a project funded by a program of the European Commission that is not related directly to culture, which is the COSME program. And the name of the project, as I was saying at the beginning, is Culture Data. The framework where we are working is the framework of a program that wants to support the companies in tourism sector to overcome all the difficulties of the last 2 years by fostering a process of digital transition. But as we did in previous occasion, we wanted to take the chance of this program to try and bring an experimentation that had to do with the network of European Capital of Culture. So with this excuse, and together with a pool of very good partner, we started to work in January of this year in the Culture Data project. Just to give you an idea of who are the partners and why this project is relevant for the ecosystem of European Capital of Culture. Apart from Matera as a city, we have the colleagues from Chemnitz as well involved in the project. There are previous Capital of Culture like Leeuwarden or Košice. There are also cities that applied to be European Capital of Culture as Leiria in Portugal, but didn't succeed in the first round, and regions like Extremadura in Spain that are starting a slow process towards becoming one of the candidates for the ECoC when the turn for Spain will come again. Now, the project had a clear starting point. European Capital of Culture are in a path of 8 years, 10 years, 5 years, depending on when the process of the cities, when starts and when it stops, are producing an enormous amount of data. These data have to do with several aspects. They have to do with economic sectors, they have to do with culture, they have to do with the engagement of the community, they have to do with connection with policymaker. So starting from what we experienced here in Matera, where there was an issue with collecting and putting all the data in the same place. The data that were coming, for example, on the tourism sector from the companies, from the restaurants, the data that had the municipality, the data that had the Agency for Promotion of Tourism. So what we really wanted to do was to try and understand how to valorize this data, understanding where they are, understanding what we can do with this data in order to make the process and the path of European Capital of Culture something that is able to have not only a process that is under control, monitored, and able to take different paths should the program need to be reorganized, but also to understand what is the impact of the European Capital of Culture, and not only on the area of culture, but on other economic sectors, primarily tourism and the creative industry side of the creative and cultural sectors. What is the engagement of the population, how the population is perceiving this big phenomenon and an event that is happening in their town. And we would like to make sure that the teams that are working in European Capital of Culture, they know and they are able to put together all the players that can have something to say about this topic. Of course, because when the ECoC is over, then we are talking about legacy, but legacy can be strong only if there is a clear understanding of what the process has been, a clear capacity to show the impact of what happened, and also the work of policymaker after a European Capital of Culture can really be facilitated because there are data available and data that are interpreted and collected. So what we are going to do, the first step of this project is about informing European Capital of Culture of what we want to do. So in these days, we are sending out in letter an invitation to colleagues in what we call the ECoC ecosystem, which for us is not only the network of cities that have been awarded as European Capital of Culture, but also the network of the cities that apply to be European Capital of Culture or are thinking to be applicant for the bid. Why this? Because the knowledge that is produced in the process is so incredible. And of course, you know, I don't have to tell you because the work that we have done is has made this so visible. That of course we are very interested not only in what the cities that have succeeded are doing, but also on what is happening in cities that maybe have not been selected, and how all these things can really support the others. So the first thing is something like a network, and we prefer to call it ecosystem because it's you know, it's something that is really having several connections with several stakeholders. The second action that has just started is the creation of an observatory, a pilot observatory for now, because the project will be a 2-year project, and we are trying to understand how to set up something more, you know, forward-looking, which we are calling ECoC Watch, and the ECoC Watch will start to analyze how European Capital of Culture have been dealing with data, have been dealing with the topic of impact measurement, have been dealing with the collection and the use of information that were able to show the impact of the European Capital of Culture on several aspects, as I was saying before, not only cultural consumption or audience engagement, but also local development, tourism development, the creation of new companies in the creative sector, and all this kind of information. The ECoC Watch has a board of researcher experts that have been working with a specific eye on the topic of impact inside the European Capital of Culture and the topic of monitoring, as well as expert of creative industries and tourism, because the two sectors that in this project are for first under the light for the ECoC Watch are these two sectors. And of course, as I was saying before, we don't simply want to create an observatory that is collecting data and maybe publishing reports and paper, but we would like to also connect all this information with the level of policymakers that should really be the one who are able to take the most out of the data and design new policies that could really make the process, starting with an application for the European Capital of Culture, a process that will have an impact on a territory, on a region, or on a city that could last more than 10 years. This activity in particular will be coordinated by the colleagues in Chemnitz, and it will be about really trying to understand how the data can influence the policy level of the cities that are involved. As I was saying, this project is 24 months. We started in January. We are going to have several activities, not all related to ECoC cities, some of them related to stakeholders that are working inside the European Capital of Culture. But our ambition is to start from this first pilot observatory, which will be the ECoC Watch, and working together with the ecosystem of cities that we might have engaged during these 2 years, trying to see if the model of the observatory could really become something that the cities are developing and starting every time they would like to participate in the process of European Capital of Culture. And we think that it's not because it's one of the things that the Commission is requiring for a city to participate in the competition, that this kind of data collection and elaboration should happen. We strongly believe that the capacity to understand what are the relevant data, where they are, who are the players that are using this data, how to process them, how to valorize. These are all things that every city, not only European Capital of Culture, might need in order to design their development in the following years in different sectors. We would try to continue make the community of ECoC grow and be connected with other initiatives that might come from different other sources and different other European programs. And in this, Becky will tell you something more, trying to maximize and connect individual projects that the cities are doing together with other initiatives that have happened in a way that we can ensure to very valuable and very relevant initiatives the capacity to survive the process and the experience that the city is living. And the other thing is that, of course, the project Culture Data is trying to create a connection between the actors, the stakeholders from private and public sectors that are active in two of the sectors that are the one on which it might be easier to start working and start valorizing the information and the data collected in the process, which are culture, of course. And so the impact of a European Capital of Culture in the cultural and creative dimension of a city and a region, a different level, and of course tourism. And I mean, here in Matera we have some experience on how a European Capital of Culture can really boost tourism and make a city become visible on the map of the European destination. So this is about the work that is happening now. Of course, for the colleagues that are following this event, we will have We are launching in this moment the campaign, as I was saying, for cities that are interested in understanding a little more about what we are doing, so showing interest through some letter of support. And then in Matera on the 9th and 10th of June, we are going to have an event, which will be a hybrid event, of course, where we will try to cover different aspects related not only to the specific work of the Cultural Data Project, but in general about the concept of how a European capital of culture is able to generate impact on the local economy outside the purely cultural dimension. Now I leave the floor to Becky.
Thanks again, Jordi, for this opportunity. It's been a really interesting session. Resonated with a lot of things that Nicole spoke about, and also Anna as well. So my name is Becky, as Paolo said. I work for Matera Hub, but I've been a member of the Matera 2019 Foundation since 2018, and I also project managed an Erasmus Plus vocational training project for them until a couple of months ago. So we still work very closely with the foundation. I wanted to just share, I guess, a reflection that has developed slowly over the last couple of years about what we can do in terms of developing legacy for ECoCs, and specifically how to leverage the digital opportunities that we have to develop legacy. It's a really important part of the ECoCs because we put so much effort. We put our hearts and souls into making the ECoC programs happen. They're an emotional episode, I think, for most people that run them because they really believe in building opportunities in their territory and making a difference for the local citizens. And a lot of money is put into the ECoCs as well, and that's another reason why we need to make sure that we make the most of any legacy opportunity that we have. And the reflection I have is that there's two ways to go. There's the sharing element of what we've done, and very much linked to the project Paolo shared now called Data. And also the open data platform that the Matera 2019 organization created, the monitoring reports, sharing what you've learned and the knowledge that is really important. But it's also about developing on what's been created over those years, and that's, I think, where it becomes really challenging for many reasons. The focus on the vision of the year after the ECoC, I think, is sometimes difficult to do because the work is just so immense to actually plan and implement an ECoC year. And I think there's a mixture of opportunities that come out of ECoCs. If I focus on Matera, for example, we have some spontaneous legacy activities that are digital. We have ECoC News, for example, which is an online platform to share the news of ECoCs past, present and future that has been launched spontaneously on a volunteer basis by the press officer for the Matera 2019 Foundation. And that's a really lovely example. But then we have other legacy spin-offs that have been spontaneous. The volunteer organization from Matera 2019 was significant, impressive, energetic, and they all loved each other, hundreds of them together on one WhatsApp group, and it worked. I don't know how the volunteer manager managed it, but it worked. But then we also need to think about focusing on planning the development of legacy and how that can be done. And it was interesting what Nicole said about there's almost a mismatch in the life cycles of projects. So we have ECoC, which is a 10-year journey from the beginning to the end. It's a long time, especially when you put it up against Erasmus Plus 2, 3, 4-year projects. And yet there are lots of opportunities within European funding to develop further ideas. If you can go on to the next slide, Paolo, that would be great. Thank you. which can help us build further what we've learned, harness the experience that we've gained and share it. So I just wanted to share this example of something that was done by Matera 2019 through a vocational centres of excellence pilot Erasmus Plus project called DELS. It was inspired, it's a legacy of Matera 2019. It was inspired by the pillar project called Open Design School, which I think many of you might have already heard of, and I know certainly many of you know my colleague Rita Orlando, who drove that project. The idea of this school was that it created a multidisciplinary, peer-to-peer, informal, challenge-based applied learning environment, very practical, very pragmatic. And our inspiration for DELS was, well, how can we upscale? This worked locally. It had a specific mandate. It had to produce the infrastructure that we needed to implement the program, but it had the potential as a methodology to go further. How could we do that? And we could do that through DELS. We could do that by launching it online. We could do that by working with other ECoC partners. So we involved past, present, and future. We had Malta, Kaunas, Kozice, with us as well as other partners, experienced partners, to rewrite the methodology so that it could be used in any context, and then to create also a digital map to allow the experimentation that we carried out throughout that project through our living labs to be shared, to illustrate what opportunities there are for upscaling some of the experience that we gained throughout the life cycle of a European Capital of Culture project. And then from there, we were thinking, well, how can we keep this going? It's 2 years. It's a massive project. We put our souls into it. We believe in it. We want to make it work. We had big plans. We have big plans for, for producing a platform that offers every solution that anyone from the creative and cultural sector should ever need. Perhaps the way to do that is to connect the projects. So, for example, Culturdata, which is being led by Matera Hub, who were also partners with DELS, so we've worked closely together and it's been strategical. We inserted into the writing of that application that we would be using the platform of DELS to host the development and the outputs of Culturdata, keeping it animated, keeping the audiences, keeping the focus also on European Capitals of Cultures as a specific audience, for example. So that's one way of trying to create the continuity. There have been other ways of doing it as well. For example, the Capacity Building for European Capitals of Culture project have collaborated with Culturdata in terms of research that was done initially. We don't need to reinvent the wheel with some things. We can actually we can do more by building on things that have already been done, and actually go one step further than we would have been able to if we'd done it ourselves. Another nice thing about DELS as well, which I just wanted to highlight just to illustrate the potential. This was a project that ran throughout the pandemic, so we didn't meet anybody, and lived all of those challenges of screen fatigue and lack of physical contact that we all had. As a consequence, when we came to our final conference, that should have been a massive event in Brussels, that clearly could not happen. We were fed up, and so the team, we invented the idea of doing a radio for our final event, to spice things up, make it more interesting, keep our attention levels up as well. We didn't want to do a Zoom call. And through that type of experimentation, we not only enjoyed ourselves, but we had very surprising results in terms of the amount of interest, the visibility, the numbers of people following. We reached numbers that we could never have reached had we done things traditionally. And so again, that's another initiative which is actually it's continuing beyond the lifeline of the DELS project. It's continuing to be developed with the experience of Open Design School as a pillar project of Matera 2019 and the experience of the other partners and Matera Hub. We have a Radio DELS session next week, for example. So, these are nice examples of how we can be creative, I think, and create synergy between the opportunities that are given with relatively short-term projects within the European programs and the relatively long-term life cycle of a European Capital of Culture. Last slide, please, Paolo. Thanks. And so really, it's just I just wanted to end with a general reflection on this is just a snapshot of legacy activities, initiatives, and projects or that have come out of European Capitals of Culture, but also policy-driven projects that have come out of a recognition at policy level that the ECoC ecosystem can be supported and can grow and be strengthened with additional support. There are many other examples. It's about creating, I think, a connection, a vision, and a strategy to connect the projects so that we can create longevity, so that we can ultimately have more impact. And certainly, you know, I'm not just talking about digital, I'm clearly talking about strategy, but it's such an inherent part of strategy, the digital visibility, that I think that they all merge into one at this stage, on this topic at least.
Now it's the turn of Paula. Benvinguda, Paula. Thank you very much for being here. What is the Digital Rights Coalition, the Coalition of Cities for Digital Rights? And what you do, what guidance you provide to cities, and how is your work, and this is a difficult question, how is your work, or how your work can be potentially interesting for an European Capital of Culture?
Thank you, Jordi, and thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure, and also because it's a different landscape than what I'm used to. I'm used to working with like the innovation teams and like the digital. So it's good to be with teams that have a different focus and to also learn how you're doing it in the field of culture. So I was really eager to join to see how you're doing, no? And actually what you've been explaining and the framework you have and the projects, like the concrete projects that you were sharing, are very much connected to like our vision from the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. So I'm gonna introduce myself. I'm Paula Boet, and I work for the city of Barcelona, especially like more concretely for the Commissioner for Digital Innovation. And from there, I coordinate the city's projects around digital rights, inclusion, AI, etc. And I also am the link between the city and the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. And I wanted to bring up the topic of digital rights and what we do there, because I think it's a pressing issue, no? When we talk about digitalization in cities and in the many areas that digitalization touches. Digitalization is transforming every aspect of the city, and from like cultural interactions, social interactions, economic. It's producing a super large amount of data. It's generating new exclusions. So it really puts cities at this it urges them to act towards this challenge. No, cities are, due to this concentration of people, of activities, economic, cultural, social, of interactions, they are hubs of data production. No? They and also there are places where new technological solutions and new technological applications are tested faster, no? Be it digitalized services, for instance, I'm thinking of culture, but also new kind of devices. So I don't know, augmented reality devices, or I don't know, automatic vehicles, this kind of stuff. No, so that's really what makes it important, and also because these kind of digital technologies bring about a lot of dangers and risks to fundamental rights, to democratic guarantees, to inclusion. No, they put us at this kind of yeah, as I was saying, urge to act. No, so I wanted to give like a brief overview of like the catastrophic image, and then afterwards explain what cities can do. No, so these new technologies bring about many, like we in Barcelona and the Cities Coalition, we like to add that that they add a layer of inequalities to the inequalities that already exist. And we have seen this with COVID, with the digitalization of more basic services. We see that these kind of technologies close the door to basic rights, to work, to education, to have access to administrative procedures, to follow up with social life or cultural life. And that's why it's more important than ever to grant access, devices, and connectivity. But not only that, it also digital technologies, for instance, algorithmic systems, bring about new forms of bias and automation of inequalities. And that's why they also demand the right measures of transparency, accountability, explainability to be put into place. And they also bring about threats to privacy and to the increased risk of tracking and profiling communities, for instance, or individuals. Also, they bring the risk that optimization is made easier and automation are made easier, but they often come at the cost of leaving people behind, of automating or optimizing, but not for people, maybe for profit or for more efficiency, but not with people in mind. And that also links with the idea that some services are developed not having the user in mind, but doing it for the sake of the technology. So all this kind of picture of what a non-human centric or non-people centric digitalization could be. We have actually been living this with I like to talk about the smart city madness, and I like to say that we're in the hangover phase of that, that we're noticing that what happens when you deploy sensors that collect data. Oh, you might have privacy breaches, you might have privacy violations, all that kind of stuff. And I think that we have gone through a decade of this enthusiasm of techno-optimism and techno-solutionism, prioritizing digital innovation that are super crazy and super fancy and advanced, but that don't actually do anything for the city, And I like to say that we're in this moment of hangover, but that we're recovering, we're doing things, and that's where the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights comes in. This is a network of over 50 cities that was founded in 2018 by the cities of Amsterdam, Barcelona, and New York, and with the support of UCLG, Eurocities, and UN Habitat. And it's a community of cities that are committed to this vision of digital transformation that is people-centered and focused on leaving no one behind. And we, back in the day when the coalition was founded, we created these 5 principles that reflect all these dimensions of an ethical and people-centered digitalization. Some people think it's only about open data or data privacy or about digital inclusion, but it's like a overarching topic that encompasses a lot of topics. And I'm gonna read out loud the principles so you can see more or less how a digitalization that puts digital rights at the center has to be taken up. The first principle would be universal and equal access to the internet and digital literacy. So making sure that everyone has access and can do it with the right devices and can afford it. Then having privacy, data protection, and security mechanisms to ensure that technologies are not risky and don't put individuals and their integrity and their privacy at risk. Transparency, accountability, and non-discrimination of data and content and algorithms, making sure that you're not affected unfairly by an algorithm decision, or that why a decision was made, because algorithms have this problem that they can be black box. So that's what we call them, that they based on an input you get an output, but you don't know what happened in the middle, and that affects you as an individual and affects your fundamental rights. So that's a problem. The fourth principle would be participatory democracy, diversity, and inclusion, and also taking into account that digital technologies offer new ways and new possibilities for engaging with the citizens and making them participate. How you do that, and how do you make them have a say over what technologies are deployed in the city too. That's another important thing. And the fifth would be open and ethical digital service standards. So what kind of services you build and what kind of open source software and interoperability standards you put into place to ensure that digital technologies serve the common good, and they align with this idea of the commons, and they are not just privatized. So with all this kind of environment in mind, the Cities Coalition works we say it works in 3 layers. So the first one would be like advocacy. So giving this message at international organizations, other cities, talking to city representatives to let them know that this path towards human-centric digitalization exists. Then we have the more networking or learning and exchanging best practices layer, which is what we're doing here. We also do, and we like to have city managers and the more technical personnel in city councils have exchange, and share how they're doing, how they're implementing local projects. And I don't know, I'm building an open data portal. What has worked in your city? What has in mine? So these kind of things. And then we have the third layer that it's what we're mostly focused on lately. That would be supporting cities and building capacity. Also what we're doing here. Which is very important because the field of digital rights is very new. There's often like confusion about what are digital rights, and we're really focused on that. So with that in mind of ultimately helping cities integrate digital rights in their strategies and projects, we have developed what's called the Digital Rights Governance Framework Project, which aims to build the whole framework for governing digital rights in cities. And this project has 2 components. One is the framework, which is a document that I will share afterwards, that sets the foundations that a city needs to adhere to when committing to digital rights. So whether you create a bill of digital rights, whether you publish, you adhere to data principles, what kind of things you can commit to more at the political level. And then you have the structures, which are the kind of mechanisms that you can put in place at a citywide level to ensure that digital rights are protected. So whether it's giving the mandate for digital rights to a political representative, appointing an external advisory council, so these kind of mechanisms that can help. And then we developed also some tools that are practical, and maybe this is useful for some of you here, that for instance, in Barcelona, we have the CVM platform, which is a digital platform for citizen engagement, or I don't know, open data portals, digital inclusion surveys and policies. So this kind of concrete tools that break down the whole spectrum of digital rights. And that's an exercise that we have done in collaboration, in co-creation with city experts, and also experts from outside the cities that have worked in digital policy and this kind of field, and that's out there. You can watch it, you can read it. It's a draft version that still is going to be iterated, but the idea is that since digitalization is an open field and a very fast evolving one, and we're going to keep that updated throughout the years. And that framework, which is a document, but that it's a living one, and that has very useful insights, is going to be implemented in cities through what we call Digital Rights Help Desk, which is going to be an online platform for city personnel to access there and to have access to experts that are gonna guide them through this kind of implementation of digital rights. And we're actually gonna, this is very exciting because we're gonna start working with 4 pilot cities in Europe, so Brussels, Dublin, Tirana, and Sofia. that are going to start testing this, and I mean that's going to start. I cannot share any learnings now, but we asked them to define some challenges that they encounter when facing digitalization. So for instance, Dublin wants to work on a capacity building program on emerging technologies for teenagers, for instance, which is very interesting. Or Sofia wants to develop their internal digital strategy and add digital rights. So that, well, we're going to be working with the cities, and all in all, that's kind of a little bit of the picture. I don't know if you have questions. It would be great to get your inputs to how you think digital rights and culture interact, because that's like a new field for me. I work for like the more digital innovation policy topics, so it's good to see. And yeah, happy to be here and to discuss.
Very good. Thank you very much, Paula. Yes, I wanted you to mention this piloting process you are now involved with. You said Dublin, Sofia,
Tirana,
Brussels,
and Brussels.
The fourth one is which one?
Tirana.
Tirana.
Albania. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very good. And I'm sure that there will be promising spheres in which the agenda and the challenges of digital rights coincide with the challenges of cultural rights and cultural policies. All right. So now, Nicole, the floor is yours. If you want to comment what you have learned from Anne, Paolo, Becky, and Paula, and give also perhaps final recommendations for us all.
I'd like to say thank you all for the contributions. I've learned a lot. It's really amazing to see the project which Paolo introduced. Becky, wonderful for your insights as well. And great to hear what the progress has been in the past months. And Paula, a really fascinating take. And I think it's so important that we learn from other sectors. Maybe my last reflection on will be on a few things. The digital hangover, I think, that you mentioned, Paula, comes back to something which was discussed earlier. I think in this, you have to go through this process of learning, but the ways of shortening and learning from others, so that the mistakes that you can make fewer mistakes in your process, I think, are important. So this sharing opportunity is really fantastic, and hopefully, I think it's really key in the cultural sector. I think we've finally begun to understand that culture is not neutral, and that there are so many value judgments, and that everything we're collecting, everything we do, the people are excluded or who is included. There are a lot of things we need to be aware of, and in the digital realm also. So I think this our literacy around digital rights is becoming stronger in the cultural sector, and we saw this reflected in some of the content in our academy camp about these collaborative open source platforms, which we're encouraged to use for community building, noting the challenges, as we discussed, of knowing how to use these, learning those skills, and reaching people on the platforms that they are already on. I don't think I will add any more than that. I loved also Becky's perspective on that. It's around and also echoed, I think, by Paula, that digital is the service of the bigger goal, not that digital is the purpose itself. And from that, yeah, it's perfect, and keeping people at the center. So that's everything from me.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Christina, Sylvain, also Lucia from AEIDEL, do you want to ask a question, or do you want to make any comment?
I just would like to thank you for organizing it. It's been a very intense 2 days, but very, very relevant for what we all do. And for me personally, I've learned a lot. And particularly this afternoon session leaves me with a lot of food for thought. It was great to hear past and future experiences, how they will relate with these tools, with this idea of using digital and digital tools. You might have understood that for me, it is somehow problematic because I'm still trying to really understand how to convey the right message when I work with institutions about the use of digital and digital tools. So it was very interesting to see how it's been used, with what kind of results, and what are the very promising future actually applications of this. So I just would like to thank you. Thank you very much for these very interesting 2 days.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would like to also thank you all for firstly organizing this last academic camp, and for all the participants and all the experts that took part in these 2 very intense days. I'm really sorry I wasn't able to join yesterday for the whole day, but today was very inspiring and very useful. And I think it was a wonderful way how to close the journey of academic camps. And I also would like to invite everybody, and especially the ECoC delivery teams that are present here, to also look on the other resources that we've been developing during this service contract, like the pool of experts, which now has more than 250 profiles in various expertise, and also on podcasts, webinars, and our library on the website. Thank you.
Sylvain?
Yes, of course. I would like also to thank you, to thank the consortium, all members of the consortium for the excellent work done all along the way from October 2019 to today. It has been a fascinating journey for me. Yesterday, today as well, the digital world, which is so unknown to me, seeing also the many opportunities, but the risks, and the need for a digital literacy, which is still very challenging a bit everywhere. So many thanks. It was very nice also to see indeed the transfer of know-how, knowledge, practices between past, present, future European capitals of culture, candidate cities as well, because that is really in the spirit of the European Union. I mean, we are just trying to promote such exchanges to also accelerate the knowledge curve of our cities, our citizens, our stakeholders across the European Union. So many thanks.
It's been a pleasure, really. It was a challenge, and when we first discussed this idea with Jordi, we were aware that it was a challenge. But my feeling is, as I've said earlier, is that it closes in a very nice way the cycle of academy camps, and has enabled for a further exchange on the issues that are priority issues for all of us. And as has been said, learning opportunities are always a luxury. So it's been a wonderful 2 days. We have here EIDL, who is the lead partner of our consortium. So if Lucia allows me, in the name of the consortium, EIDL, but of course also Culture Action Europe, but of course also NCAT, the European Network of Cultural Management and Policy, also in the name of us, InterArts, partners in this project, and of our associate, Committee on Culture, UCLG. The project arrives to its end, but as has been said, we are leaving also our little small legacy in many forms, the database of experts, but the repository of information, but also all the material that has been produced for the academy camps, and also the series of podcasts which will remain. So I think that beyond the academy camps, there is also a wealth of knowledge to be pulled from by whomever is interested in these topics. Of course, Silva, our thanks to you, European Commission, DG EAC, Directorate of Culture, and in particular you and the team for having put your trust in us during these 2 years, and for accompanying us yesterday and today. We've been really extremely happy to have you on board. And I think that this has given you an idea of, the style also of this project and what we have tried to do over these 2.5, 30 months actually. I cannot but not thank all the lead trainers that have worked with us in the design, structure, and delivery of the Academy camps. Cristina Navilano, and the 4 other trainers that were with her in our first fully digital adventure back in October 2020. But of course, also Nicole McNally. It was wonderful working with you in the delivery of the second Academy camp. And then, of course, Silvia Mann, who was yesterday with us, and François Matarazzo, who was with us this morning. It's been a luxury working with the 4 of you and all the groups of people that you have managed to put together. When one looks at the programs of the Academy camps, there is a wealth there of expertise. And someone said it earlier, let's not forget about the human touch and the importance of the human relations. And the Academy camps were not only about delivering knowledge, but they were also about exchanging and about trying as much as possible to nurture the human relationships that make us work in a better way. And of course, as far as I am concerned, Jordi, a big thank you to you for managing in such an excellent way these 4 sessions. And also, of course, to Sarah Vieux from Committee on Culture, UCLG. So it's been wonderful delivering this last Academy camp with you. It's, again, a luxury. And finally, I would like to thank Fran Gracia, my colleague from InterArts, who has accompanied me throughout these 30 months, doing a lot of the work. So I will always be thankful to him. He's not with us today. He is starting a new professional adventure in Tunisia, but he would have wanted to be with us today. It has not been yesterday and today. It has not been possible. But my gratitude goes to him, and of course also to Chiara Serio, who has been behind the scene these 2 days silently helping us out. And of course, to all of you who have been with us these 2 days, I hope that you share in what we all have said, that it's been an interesting conversation, and let's keep it up and hope to meet somewhere soon. Thank you so much.